Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And hey, we turn podcast, everyone. Once you go podcast, you don't go back, and we're happy that you're here joining us today. We have computer and technology news on today's segment. Everything from some Apple updates, some Meta updates, some Huawei intrigue, if you haven't heard about that, some data breaches, some hacks, just a little of everything in between. Everyone, I hope that you're ready for a news-filled day. So before we get started, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, everything you need to know in one very simple place. You can find it right there. And hey, it will include links to any stories that we talk about, any topics, and thanks to Rover in the chat. You can also head on over to our free software page where we have added a couple more items. I'm trying to keep that up to date as much as possible, and I want it to be a one-stop master list of places to get, kind of free software. Just if you're bored, if you're looking to learn, if you're looking to socialize, interact, and more, more so than just, I'm sure a lot of the items you've heard about. I mean, let's face it, we have Chrome on there for heck's sake, but it's also going to include a lot of things that you haven't heard of, and all in one convenient place. So, give that a look. And I think we recently added giveaway of the day, which gives away a piece of software every single day. And we also included Night Nights, which actually looks very, very cool, that installs multiple programs at once. And you can imagine, especially if you switch computers a lot or you manage a lot of computers, a service like that could be very, very valuable. So everyone, with all that being said, computeramerica.com, that's all you need to know. If you'd like to watch or join us throughout the day, twitch.tv/computeramerica as well. You can go ahead, give us a follow on there, and you can talk to myself throughout the day. We're on there, we're streaming video games, working on emails, inviting guests onto the program, just kind of doing everything that we used to do behind the scenes in front of the camera. So, hey, give that a look as well. All that being said, let's go ahead and jump into computer and technology news, brought to you by Computer America. Here we go. So lots of different stories that we can talk about. How about we start with Apple and a little bit of an update. So a couple of, of course. And so a couple of months ago, they had this system that they were going to implement that was actually, let's see, pull up here on the video portion. It was to reduce the amount of CSAM, which is child sexual abuse materials or something like that. And what it did was it essentially scanned your phone. It wasn't perfect. There was a way that kept everything hidden, everything, all of your data private, until at some point it reached a threshold and a certain level of confidence that it would then become not private, and a human would have to look at it, confirm that it was indeed that kind of material, and then the police would hand over to it. And I said this, back then and even here now, a lot of big tech companies, they store your data. They hold your data. Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Twitter, all of them. They are storing more and more of your data, and lawmakers, legislators in this country are forcing them to make sure that they're not a venue for, things like child porn. It's just not something that the U.S. government can really control, and they're pushing it more and more onto the people that are holding and hosting the data to police themselves, which is completely fair. If you're going to host all these images, if you have 1 billion images, hey, If it's found on your server, then you are the one responsible. Just beginning, middle, and end, that is it. If you are hosting the images, you are responsible for the images. So Apple came up with this convoluted way to check images before it was ever presented, but a lot of people really had a backlash and a lot of pushback. And I'm not saying people who were uneducated, and I'm not saying people who didn't know what was happening, but a lot of security professionals were worried about privacy, likely rightfully so. And hey, it caused a lot of hoopla. So we have a bit of an update here today that Apple removes mention of its controversial child abuse scanning from its site. Apple has hinted it might not revive its effort to scan for CSAM photos anytime soon. And MacRumors notes Apple has removed all mention of the scanning feature on its child safety website. And visiting now, you'll only see iOS 15.2's optional nude photo detection in messages and intervention when people search for child exploitation terms. So you can clearly see they're having some of the basic features. And actually, I was reading something the other day about that nude photo detection. Turns out one of the companies that does that the best and allows other companies to kind of tap into that technology is actually Amazon. Amazon has an algorithm that can detect with varying degrees of possibility that a photo is in fact a nude photo of a person. And, there's confidence up to like 90%, which means that, as long as they're 90% sure that it's a nude photo, then they would blur the photo, take action, whatever. You can set that down to 10%. You can to be very, very aggressive. You can set it up to 99% to be only slightly aggressive. Things like that. It's very common, and a lot of companies do it. So it looks like Apple is indeed doing it themselves. So for those who don't know, Apple was already scanning iCloud photos because this was supposed to be hosted on individuals' phones themselves, not just the iCloud, but phones themselves. And if iCloud Photo was enabled and enough hashes appeared in a local photo library, Apple would decrypt the relevant safety vouchers and manually review the pictures for potential harm and report them to a couple of different organizations. Apple delayed the rollout to make a couple of improvements, and however, it's now clear the company isn't in a rush to complete those changes and doesn't want to set expectations to the contrary. If local CSAM scanning reappears, it may take a long while or bear only a partial resemblance to the original system. And they said that they had a spokesperson from Apple reach out and say that, their stance hasn't changed since September, but it definitely seems like they've pushed this one to the back burner. More training, more AI, machine learning. It needs to be like 99.999% confident when dealing with something like users' private photos, and especially of that nature. So you don't want police knocking on the door of every single person who happens to have, let's say, a photo goes viral that is absolutely not child abuse material, but it just so happens to be close enough to, whatever the image composition may be. No kids could even be in the photo at all. It just kind of looks like it, and the image detection system, kind of goes on the fritz. Suddenly you have a rampant photo that would just blanket everyone with, this person has child abuse material. Stuff like that needs to really be taken into consideration. So they're going to work on it. They're going to improve it. It's not going anywhere. It's just not going on your phone anytime soon. So there's that one. Another quick update, just super quick. I know I experienced this if you were watching the live stream earlier today. Around 8 a.m. Pacific or 11:30 a.m. Eastern, there was a widespread outage due to Amazon Web Services. That's right, they went down again, and this time, luckily, for only about an hour or about 30 minutes to an hour. Things were starting to go on the fritz. I know that we were trying to connect to a couple different servers, and it was just failing. Video game clients went down, and this is becoming more and more of a thing. I'm not sure if it's more and more of a thing because Amazon is running more of the web, but it's becoming more of a thing because of, hey, just Amazon is doing worse at their job. But by and large, that's what you kind of get. That's what you expect. And yeah, it's back up and running already. So no real need to drive that point home. So there you go. Story number 2. Story number 3. Let's go ahead and... All right, this is going to be the most ridiculous story we do today. And I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying I'm having a hard time believing it's true. So this coming to us from Vice, saying that a man lifts his sleeping ex-girlfriend's eyelids to unlock her phone, stealing $24,000. You know, I often say, turn on two-factor authentication, turn on biometrics. They're very safe. They're very secure. It's really hard to steal your fingerprints. It's really hard to steal your face. Although I have I have more reservations about facial scanning because time and time again, it seems like they're fooled by pictures all the time. This one's a bit different though. And so a Chinese man has been jailed for lifting his sleeping ex-girlfriend's eyelids to unlock her phone so it could steal money from her digital wallet. You can imagine she's laying there on her back and he takes his fingers and kind of pulls her eyelids back so it's almost like she's awake, and it unlocks the biometric face scan kind of thing. As for what kind of drugs, and actually very astute, I said the same thing myself when I first heard this. No way she wasn't drugged in some way. No way she, any normal sleeping person under normal sleeping conditions wouldn't wake up when you're getting your eyes messed with. Now, the man in the southern city of Nanning, so this is happening in China, was recently sentenced to 3.5 years in prison and fined $3,100 for stealing about $24,000. And I'm assuming on top of that, he had to send the original amount back. It's not like he made a profit of $21,000. But still, the 28-year-old visited his ex-girlfriend in December last year after telling her he wanted to return some money he borrowed while they were dating. And while she was sick at the time, he prepared her food and cold medicine. After the woman fell asleep, he put her finger on the smartphone to unlock the device and then lifted her eyelids to pass the facial recognition check on Alipay. Then he transferred money from her savings account and credit services to his own account, took away her phone and a coat, and used the fund on living expenses and covering his gambling debts. That's very not fair, but cold medicine. She was asleep due to cold medicine. She made a report to the police after failing to reach her ex-boyfriend, who fled to another city and was arrested in April this year. The case went viral on the Chinese internet over the weekend and prompted discussion on the security lags of facial recognition checks. And this is such a niche case that might actually set precedent. How much of the face needs to be identified and how much can be obstructed before you kind of not let someone into an account. Banking in particular, or I should say payment apps in particular, might not be suitable for facial recognition. Because again, we've seen time and time again, it's just not very good. It really isn't. So in response to the case, a customs service customs service representative told news outlets that Alipay would offer compensation in this rare case of theft, and users could turn on multiple locks to enhance security. Although it sounds like at this point, let's face it, she also fell asleep and was drugged by someone she should not have trusted in her house and her physical phone and things like that. I mean, in terms of hacking, this is an extreme form of social engineering where he actually had access to all of her biometrics because he had access to her unconscious body. it's really hard to defend. I mean, you can't like Weekend at Bernie's her, I guess, into the bank and, prop her up and be like, hey, I would like to withdraw all my money and give it to my ex-boyfriend. Still, it's very, very strange. So, yeah, and obviously things like a voice phrase, which I know that there are services nowadays that record a voice print, although even those are not extremely accurate, especially in her case. If she had a cold, that can clog up your sinuses, change the tonality of your voice, and then the voice wouldn't even work either. But again, she would have likely not wanted him to access her bank account. This is just very, very strange. And like I said, the most strange story we have today. So there you go. Story number 3. Story number 4. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of these Chinese companies getting sanctions yet again. And this one, of all the dumb ways to get caught, Huawei got caught in a very common trap, and that is one of its own design. Mariella Moon over at Engadget, Huawei documents reportedly show involvement in China's surveillance efforts. And we've mentioned this. You don't get to be one of the main players in China if you don't cooperate with the Chinese government. To run a business in China, you have to have a business license given to you by the state. And the state only gives out a certain number of those. They're highly sought after. And if you reach any level of success, you have a very close tie, and they can pull your business license and you have to stop operating completely until the following year. So if you want to be a business, you have to have close ties to the Chinese government in China. And we're seeing that more and more in this case, Huawei, where they have long denied working with Chinese government to spy on other countries and their own citizens. But according to the Washington Post, who reviewed about 100 PowerPoint presentations from the company that can show how it's linked to China's surveillance projects. And check this out. While the slides were marked confidential, they were reportedly posted on a public-facing Huawei website until they were removed last year. So they put them up, I'm assuming so that employees can, look at them and, review them at their leisure, but it was public-facing, not private-facing. Once again, they forgot to put something on the private part of their network. So the Washington Post has published a handful of slides that have been translated to English, and they say that they can help authorities by analyzing voice recordings, much to Rover's example about requiring a voice print for your bank information. Clearly, you have companies like Huawei already taking quote-unquote voice prints. So not fingerprints, but voice prints. It's completely possible, and a lot of places are doing it. It's supposed to help them with matters of national security, and as the publication notes, that means it could be used to identify individuals involved in political dissent, Hong Kong and Taiwan matters, and discussions surrounding ethnic relations. Now, another slide shows a comprehensive prison surveillance system, which has apparently been implemented in prisons in Inner Mongolia and Jiangxi province. They mentioned that detainees of the internment camps, mostly members of the Uyghur ethnic group, accuse their operators of forced labor, torture, and detaining them without charges. So we've often talked about the forced labor camps in China. Those are pretty well known. Unfortunate side effect, but yeah, haven't done anything about those yet. So let's see. So next one, they have facial recognition technology help capture a number of criminal suspects, and yet another shows a surveillance system that can pinpoint the location of political persons of interest using their electronic devices. I mean, even in the U.S., the one case that kind of comes to mind immediately is Ghislaine Maxwell, who was that lady from Florida who helped that billionaire who's currently slipping my mind. Anyways, Ghislaine Maxwell was found after she was using her cell phone, and they pinged a couple of towers. They found her in a log cabin in the middle of the wilderness, but she had tried to wrap her cell phone in tinfoil or aluminum foil, but yeah, she still took it out to use it. Like, if you don't want to be found, the cell phone is the ultimate tracking device, and people are immensely connected to it because, hey, that's our connection to the outside world. It looks like they're taking that to the exact same extreme as I'm sure most developed countries are. Now, they admit that they can't confirm who the slides were shown to or when, but most of them were created back in 2014 and were edited as recently as last year. A spokesperson told the publication, though, that the company has no knowledge of the project mentioned in the Washington Post reports and that it provides cloud platform services that comply with common industry standards. So, there you go. Get a burner phone. Burner phones themselves aren't even that safe. But, I mean, yeah, if... yeah, that is likely your best option. I mean, your best option is to just not have a phone. So that seems to be it. But hey, we're not telling people how to get away with things. We're telling people about how other people try to get away with things and just didn't really work out well. So they mentioned that, let's see, so one other company that's actually has a huge presence in at CES in particular. I don't know how big of a presence they're going to have this year, but DJI, if you haven't heard about them, then you don't know much about drones because they are like the premier drone company. And they mentioned that US puts drone maker DJI and 7 other Chinese companies on investment blocklist. So US citizens will be barred from making any investments in these companies. So this is actually U.S. President Joe Biden's pressure for China for repression of the Uyghur Muslim population and other ethnic minorities in the region. Xiaomai was placed on the same block list in early 2021, and DJI commands a massive 77% of the consumer drone market over the last 2 months and has released a pair of key products. The large sensor Mavic 3 drone and the full-frame Ronin 4D cinema camera. So a year ago, DJI said it had done nothing to justify being placed on the entity list and that customers in America can continue to buy the products normally. So obviously, buying the products is one thing, investing in the company. So it's one thing for you to go out and buy one of their $10,000 drones. It's something different for an investor to give them $1 million and get, stocks or shares in the company in return. You can't invest, but you can still buy the products. And again, this is to hurt them for the Chinese repression of the Muslim minorities. So, hey, can't say he's not doing nothing. That's certainly something. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Pretty simple. We're definitely getting through these stories. Looks like we'll be done here in maybe another 10 or 10, 15 minutes, assuming we don't go on a rant. And I got a couple that are pretty rant worthy. So, okay. How about we save the rant for last? Meta expands the bug bounty program for scraped data. So, fun little fact, if you find a repository that has yet to be reported to Facebook of scraped data. And scraping, again, is just going to every public profile on Facebook and taking down the person's name, the person's address, the person's username, and, forward-facing, public-facing information. But then you put it on a massive spreadsheet. And you collect, 500 million people's names and locations and email addresses, suddenly that becomes a problem. If you find one of these that has over, let's see, I think the threshold was like 1,000 or something like that. Let's see, it was over 100,000. There we go. If you find a repository with over 100,000 entries, you can turn that into Facebook And Facebook won't pay you like a normal bug bounty program, but to incentivize you, they will make a $500 donation to the charity of your choice. So they're expanding the bug bounty program, but not completely. I'm guessing this is to not incentivize people to make these larger data sets publicly available for their own financial gain. So $500 award going to any charity. I think that's pretty cool. And of course, the charity of choice is me. Hey, if you can get yourself as a 501c3, then hey, life gets a lot easier. So Meta's bug bounty program, actually, need to reopen that. Okay, there we go. So pretty simple on that one. How about this? Sirius XM. I had no idea this was a thing. We tried to label all of the content on our site, so that users who use JAWS can make it easier to navigate Computer America. We try our best to make things accessible. We don't have transcripts of podcasts like these. I'm thinking it might not be the hardest thing in the world to have a transcript because, voice recognition software is getting better. So I'm hoping maybe, just maybe, we have some dictation going on in the background and post that if the need, really was there. But SiriusXM in particular, who pays a lot of money for a lot of different kinds of podcasts and programming as the distributor of content, they are being sued by the Americans, the National Association of Deaf and Disability Rights Advocates, and of course for violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. They don't make enough of their programming available for those who are hard of hearing. They don't have transcripts, and they don't post transcripts of a number of their podcasts, and the company would also have to affirmatively advertise the transcript option to deaf and hard of hearing people. So they're sued. And of course, the lawsuit notably doesn't include other heavyweights, although Apple and Spotify already offer at least some form of captioning or transcription. Spotify has promised to auto-transcribe all podcasts, for instance. Oh, well, there we go. Computer America is available on Spotify, so maybe that's an option. In a statement to The Verge, DRA's Christina Ban Young added that the organization couldn't sue every bad podcast provider in a single lawsuit. So likely, more will be coming soon. But for now, SiriusXM in particular, and I'm sure others will be following shortly. But yeah, I had no idea that it was an obligation. Like, I know that you should, and making your program accessible is always great. I had no idea that these larger services like SiriusXM, or I'm assuming things like iHeartRadio, have to make it accessible to more people. So, but hey, now that I say it out loud, it makes a lot of sense. So there you go. Okay. How about this one? You know what service we don't talk a lot about here on the show? Grindr. And when it does come up, it's never good. So check this one out. Grindr fined €5.5 million for sharing ads. Well, I should say for sharing data for ads. So it's selling people's private information. And you can imagine a service like Grindr that caters to gay men, might find it a little off-putting that people are being tracked for that kind of information. So Grindr, a location-based dating app aimed at the LGBTQ community, has been fined £6.5 million, €5.5 million, and I'm sure that works out to like $7 million for user data, for selling user data to advertisers. They said that the Norwegian Data Protection Authority said that they have violated GDPR. So there you go. The fine was reduced from €8.6 million after Grindr provided details about its financial situation and made changes to its app. So got a couple of million saved off the top. They mentioned that our conclusion is that Grindr has disclosed user data to third parties for behavioral advertisement without a legal basis. The fine, the largest the Norwegian DPA has issued, is large because regulators consider the infringements to be grave. Data which have found the app had shared included GPS location, IP address, advertising ID, age, gender, and the fact that the user was on Grindr itself. So obviously the fine had originally been higher, but it was reduced after Grindr provided information about its size and financial situation, which by and large, I'm not too familiar with Grindr, but because Grindr services the LGBTQ community, let's face it, that is like what? I think last I read that was like 3 to 5% of the overall population. They're much smaller than things like Tinder and other dating services. So the regulator said it had not assessed whether the current consent mechanism complied with GDPR, and it did not rule out the possibility of ordering Grindr to erase the illegally processed personal data, which surprisingly, if you get fined a couple of $1 million for, but then you don't have to delete it, why do they get to keep it? It sounds like it just cost them $5.5 million to be able to keep the illegally obtained information. That seems strange to me. Okay. 3 more stories. Save the best for last. How about this one? Just real quick. Pegasus. If you don't recall what that is, not the horse with wings, but rather the group that was selling malware to countries and dictatorial regimes, well, they're running out of money. They said the NSO group makes spyware called Pegasus, which is sold to government and law enforcement agencies. The company purchases so-called zero-day vulnerabilities from hackers, and its software is said to be capable of mounting zero-click exploits, where no user interaction is required by the target. That's fair. NSO sells Pegasus only to governments, but its customers include countries with extremely poor human rights records, with political opponents and others targeted. So you can imagine things like Saudi Arabia, North Korea. Other countries are definitely on their customer list. And Pegasus, of course, says, we just make the software. What actually happens with it, that's not really our problem. That's not our fault. We can't be blamed for that. But they know who they're selling to, definitely. Well, turns out they are now in financial trouble because they are, of course, been banned from any kind of investment here in the US. And of course, well, they're known now. People know to look for their software. And if you kind of operated in the shadows and now you have a giant spotlight on you, I'm sure that their software is now even more useless, because people know about them. So they said that the scandal-plagued spyware company that's in danger of defaulting on its debts is exploring options that include shutting its controversial Pegasus unit and selling the entire company. According to people familiar with the matter, talks have been held with several investment funds about moves that could include refinancing or outright sale, who asked not to be identified with the discussions in private. The prospective new owners include 2 American funds that have discussed taking control and closing Pegasus, and under that scenario, the funds would then inject about $200 million in fresh capital to turn the know-how behind Pegasus into strictly defensive cybersecurity services. Which, hey, if you have a team that is capable of producing spyware, then with some money, some retraining, some restructuring, you have a team that is capable of defending against spyware, or so they claim. But of course, the skepticism is real. Major tech companies, including Meta and Apple, have sued the Israeli company for exploiting their platforms and snooping on people. So it's hard to trust this kind of product in a defensive avatar. Plus, there will likely be some suspicion of the presence of backdoors being built into its new products. The director of the Canadian-based research firm Citizen Labs warned that we should look out for corporate rebranding of the product. Warning, don't believe the hype about defensive products. Who would trust that company with defense? Watch out for corporate rebranding too. Which I kind of get, and it's the way I felt about a number of different organizations that have a really bad history. It's like, if the history is that loaded, it's that bad. One in particular is like, let's take this for instance, and this is an extreme example, but when you look at things like the KKK, they tried to rebrand themselves as not the hateful racists that they undoubtedly are, but they tried to rebrand themselves as defending white people rights and promoting themselves much as a counterpoint to the NAACP. They're trying to rebrand themselves as the other end of the spectrum to the NAACP, which, by the way, horrible idea. And my whole point when I first heard that was, don't really care about their mission. They're stupid. They're stupid because they're trying to take such a heavily loaded organization, entity, the KKK of all things, and they're trying to rebrand it. I'm like, if you really wanted this mission, if you really want to make any kind of headway into your cause, people are going to shut down as soon as they hear that organization. And yeah, clearly you're trying to get attention. You are claiming something and get all of the benefits from it without any of the negatives. And clearly there's way more negatives than benefits. So I feel like it's the same way. Why would you try to rebrand and reuse the Pegasus and NSO brand name when you could just disband it, disperse it, and then rehire people under a completely new entity? It's because, yeah, they're trying to hold it together to make, a last-ditch effort to make some money. So there you go. They mentioned that United States Pegasus spyware was found on iPhones of at least 9 U.S. Department employees. The U.S. government blacklisted the NSO group to stop from what it called transnational repression. Check that out. You know what? We'll include that in the show notes as well. Yep, it's the NSO spyware is. Unfortunately, it's also very good because the fact that they purchased, they were the go-between. They were purchasing zero-day hacks from hackers, and zero-day means that there is no defense for it. It's day zero, first-time defensive or cybersecurity teams and groups are seeing it. That means that there's no actual defense to it. So they went around collecting these zero-day exploits so that they can then hack into other people's phones and other organizations, either for political dissent, journalists, tracking journalists, or as was mentioned, actually tracking senators' phones. It could be very precise, and hey, that's what they did with it. So there you go. Pegasus Group running out of money, and honestly, the whole thing should just be tanked. There's really no benefit to any of that happening, or I should say, to any of that staying open. So, okay, there's that story, and then you know what? We'll ignore the rant. I ranted about it a couple days ago. We will end with everyone's favorite product, Google Glasses. If you thought they were dead, boy, you don't know Google. Although, honestly, you do know Google because Google kills a lot of things. Google Glass looks like it may be getting a second breath of life. This is coming from Ars Technica and saying that Google is building a new augmented reality device and operating system. So the first one didn't really catch on, but hey, second time's the charm. They said that on LinkedIn, operating systems engineer Mark Lukowski announced that he had joined Google. He previously headed up mixed reality operations for Meta, and before that, he was one of the key architects of Windows NT at Microsoft, saying that my role is to lead the operating system team for augmented reality at Google, he wrote. He said that, quote, "Our team is building the software components that control and manage the hardware on our augmented reality products. These are the software components that run on the AR devices and are closest to the hardware. As Google adds products to the AR portfolio, the operating system foundations team is the very first software team to work with the new hardware." So for other job listings, say new hires will be working on an innovative AR device, and one specifies that Google is focused on making immersive computing accessible to billions of people through mobile devices. And they even have an example here up on the screen of Google Glass for Enterprise. Now, Google has offered APIs and tools to help AR developers make experiences for Android, and the company still offers the once hyped Google Glass headset to enterprise customers. There you go. But these listings suggest that Google isn't just dabbling anymore. Facebook was recently renamed Meta, of course, and everything with the metaverse, all that bullcrap. All that is to say that big tech players are ramping up the battle for augmented reality, which both Zuckerberg and Tim Cook have described as the next big computing platform and smartphones. And even if you disagree, even if you disagree that the metaverse is marketing, it's bullcrap, it doesn't really exist, it's not worth your time, whatever you say. The fact that the CEOs of some trillion-dollar companies can put the research, development, and more into it, it's going to become a thing. Apple and Facebook alone can make the metaverse become a thing. And of course, now you have Google to, add to the mix. So Google, Apple, Meta, all three are gearing up, and I'm sure I know Microsoft already has products for augmented reality. And let's face it, you have companies like Intel, Nvidia, AMD also creating things that are going to be very efficient for mobile and multi-process computing, which would be great for augmented and mixed reality as well. It's going to be a thing, and I'm wondering how quickly it's going to get here, how good it's going to be. So far, everything that I've seen kind of sucks, to be honest, but hey, you got to start somewhere. So there you have it. Google is building augmented reality there. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the program. That's about it for headlines. Sorry that went a little long, but hey, it's always fun talking about that, and lots to talk about. Everyone, tomorrow on the program, we'll have a regular stream. It'll be fun. We should be doing headlines, maybe a special segment, but we are also definitely doing an interview at 4 p.m. Eastern with Quantum Emotion. There we go. They do everything about machine learning and knowing how a person feels. So everyone, if you want to find out more, that's a bit loud. There we go. Everyone, if you want to find out more, check us out, computeramerica.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are heard, search Computer America, twitch.tv/Computer America. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Catch you next time. Bye, everyone.